I ask you a question? Are you ready to get and keep momentum in your business? I hope so, because it's Penny Elliott here, your host, to having the perfect mix of the woo with the do. If you're ready to create the life that you want through a business designed by you, then tune in. Welcome to the Get Momentum for Online Entrepreneurs podcast with your host, me, Penny Elliott. And this is the show where we match the woo with the do. So that's your perfect mix of mindset and strategy to have fast success in your online business and create that life that you'd hoped you had when you first started your business. And today I have the amazing Catherine all the way from the South Island in New Zealand, and it is very nice to have someone in my time zone. So welcome.
Thank you.
And I met Catherine by her just popping up in my inbox. So definitely everyone, if you're sending emails to people and you think, oh no, I'm pestering them, you're not. And it takes quite a few touch points before some stuff starts to resonate. And I thought, who is this mysterious woman that's just popping up into the entrepreneurial space here in New Zealand? And I said to my VA Tessa, we have to have her on the show. She seems very interesting and I want to get to know her more, and let all the listeners in the community that follow this podcast into this side of you. So welcome.
Thank you. Wonderful to share this space with you this morning.
And I'm sure you've got a very formal introduction about what you do, how you help people. So tell everyone what it is that you're all about.
Nothing too formal these days, Penny. Living in a rural community in New Zealand, there's nothing formal in my life anymore. So as Penny said, I am Catherine van der Meulen, the founder of Entrepreneurial Women with Purpose, a project that we launched just last year. So maybe by my accent, you can tell that I am an Aussie. I'm an import to New Zealand, and we just moved to Marlborough last year. And that was really needed to have more space and more time with my children and reconnect to the things that were important to me. And through that time, I was really connecting to lots of women all over New Zealand and just trying to understand the lay of the land and connect to more people, because we really didn't know many people here. And it was through that I started to develop and understand and connect to women to really understand what their needs were, what they were trying to achieve, and how I could support them on that journey, which was really how Entrepreneurial Women with Purpose was started.
Amazing. Well, you've definitely done that because you've piqued the interest of quite a few people that I know in the industry in New Zealand. So well done. Really good. So we're on this podcast, we're all about creating consistent clients, and you've probably touched on your secret sauce just there with that comment about Entrepreneurial Woman on Purpose. But how do you create a consistent flow of clients? What's your secret sauce that you can share with the listeners?
Relationships and beyond the emails, the marketing and the social media, and actually developing true and authentic relationships. And I think that really is the most important way to build the longevity and create a sustainable organization. Whether you've got 1 million customers or whether you've got 5 customers or 5 clients, it's really about creating that depth, understanding who they are, understanding what's important to them. What are their behaviors? What are their values? What are their interests? And how can you meet those needs and add value to their world? Because their world is the most important thing to them. So how can you make them a better version of themselves? How can you make their business a better version of themselves? And how can you add value in a meaningful way to their worlds? Is probably not really a secret, but just a strategy of human connection, I guess.
Yeah, do you know what? I think that for some people that is secret sauce, and for people who are natural communicators and relationship builders, it just seems sort of like so, I don't know, like an unwritten kind of like code really that happens. But I'm really glad, I really love that you've touched on that relationships is the key, and true, authentic, and how you can help them be a better version of themselves. Because too many times we see in the face-to-face space, great relationships being built, right? But in the online space, I think we really are a generation that is being conditioned to how we can create those meaningful connections and relationships in an online space, and not just treat people as another number, another email on your list. Oh, I've got 5,500 people on my list. Isn't that great? Instead of thinking, if I filled a stadium with 5,500 people, how would I relate to them? And that's what it is when you send your email out every single week. So I love that you've touched on that, and that's like the key part to your business, because I really can feel that when you've been sending, your communications out, it really does feel like you are trying to build those relationships, which is something that everyone that's listening could go away and think about in your own business. How am I creating those relationships in an online sense? Is it the same as what I would do face to face? And if it's not, then make those changes.
And to give you an example of that, we had 6 events planned for Entrepreneurial Women with Purpose back in May, which we obviously had to start to reimagine. And I couldn't imagine how we were going to be able to bring that same energy and that same connection in a digital format. And when we started hosting our Zoom sessions and we had 50 or 60 people on the call, you could actually feel the energy, you could feel the connection. And I think there's a certain way that you can approach doing that, and making sure that those sessions are really interactive, and making sure that people actually feel a part of something, as opposed to just being another passive person in another Zoom session.
Yeah, exactly. And interestingly, you said that, because I interviewed James Kemp for a podcast episode previously, and he's talking about using the breakout rooms for a upcoming training that he's got, and actually having people workshopping in different rooms within Zoom. So I think we're on the cusp of how to create that vibe and that in-person feeling much more online than just one person at the front of the Zoom room and everyone else listening. So I love that you're pioneering this. This is great. So
moving from Sydney, I had to, I'm living in a rural community in the middle of, I wouldn't say in the middle of nowhere, but close to in the middle of nowhere. So my only form of communication is generally digital communication. So you have to make it work, and it really just shows, it's the Tim Ferriss model of the 4-hour work week. You can be anywhere, anytime, and still connect at that human level through digital comms.
100%. And I think also when we are forced into this situation, which, I mean, you are by your location, but most people are now throughout the world by COVID, it makes you embrace that a little bit more. Before it was like, oh, I'm not going to join that workshop for the weekend, I'll just go to the live event. But now it's not an option, so you have to participate. And then people are actually realizing, wow, I actually really feel quite connected to these people. I really feel like they're my friends. And before I've had the comments like, oh, they're not your real friends because you haven't even met them in person, and that is now gone by the by. Yeah, it's fantastic. So one of the things that I really like to share on this podcast is how, like, the real story behind an entrepreneurial journey, not the fancy cars and the and all the all the gloss and glam, because it's never a straight line to the top. So when have you had to really dig deep to get momentum in your business after a setback?
I think that a series of setbacks in my life have got me where I am. I had a business in Australia, and we had 160 fast fashion stores across Australia and New Zealand under the brand name of Supre. And, when I started in that business full time at the age of 18, first left school, we were in voluntary administration. So what I understood of what business was it was hard work. It was 7 days a week. It was 12 hours a day. And for me now, that's a very old school model. And I certainly don't. I value my time far too much to spend and contribute that kind of time to any business, because my children are far more important. But what it showed me was that hard work and dedication and commitment and that entrepreneurial spirit of taking risks and trying new things and, pushing things to the limit, were always kind of on my radar, because that's the way that we had to rebuild our business. So from going into voluntary administration, and then having no money to pull yourself out, you really have to find strategic and unique ways to approach getting ahead. And, we were able to then turn that business around to have 160 stores. But then, of course, 10 years later, it all went pear-shaped again, and the business started to take a massive nosedive. And, it was a really challenging time, and we ended up selling the business to Cotton On in a bitter-sweet deal. And I call it a bittersweet deal because it wasn't of any of our desire to have to sell it, but there was a need. There was a need to sell it. And, the good things that have come out of it, it has rebuilt our family relationships. And, and I think all of those things have been trials and tribulations and tests along the way. And, so then leaving our family business and starting my own business journey and starting my business coaching and taking myself to university when after I had my daughter, and, starting to learn the things that were really valuable and important to me, like sustainable organization design, microfinance, impact investing. And, all of those things have led me to where I am now. And I think a combination of my family business skills that I learned, the education that I got there, even though informal, very informal, and then the combination of my education at university, and then just reading and learning and listening and seeing what was going on in the world, and working in Europe and working in Asia and, working all over the world to go, what is the business model of the future that I actually want to be a part of? So I'm preaching now about the business model that sits behind B Corp certified companies, where it really focuses on the greater good of the world. And we're not just creating businesses to create profit, we're creating businesses that actually enable and support people and support the environment and impact our world in a meaningful way, socially, environmentally, and from a community perspective. So there are some of the things that I've learnt along the way that have kind of made me who I am. And, I feel like now living in New Zealand, I'm the most authentic version of myself, because I'm not living the life of anyone else but myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a wonderful space to get to, because you then feel like you're actually living in a state of flow, as opposed to these kind of rigid highs and lows. It's just kind of
like sort it out.
It's just in this nice, even flow, which is great.
Amazing. So that just shows, like, if you're listening back to this and you're thinking, wow, I'd love to get to that, it does come. I think that you have to have all those lessons to start with to be able to find where your even flow is.
Absolutely. And I always use the words that Bridget Williams from Beat and Proceed, Divine Human Being, said to me a couple of months ago when we were recording a podcast, and she said, progress compounds. And I think, we incrementally, we put things down, we do the work, we put that in, and we connect to that person. And I think all of those things gather momentum. And if we just chip away and we can create impact, and we can do 1% this year and 1% next year, in the next 10 years, we will have created a 10% change. And that's better than nothing. So I think, continuously striving and continuously looking and reevaluating and assessing and measuring what you're doing to then go, how could I do this better? Or how could I be a better version of myself? What could I read? What could I learn? What university degree could I do? What Harvard business course could I do to better myself to be a better businesswoman or a better entrepreneur or a better mother?
Yes. There's always another book you can read about being a better mother. I feel like when I first had Josh, I got a PhD in motherhood in the first 6 weeks. I think I consumed everything possible to try and stop the crying and understand what was going on.
It's a rude shock.
It sure is. So if you could go back to the beginning of starting your business, knowing what you know now, what would you tell your young entrepreneurial self?
I would say, going back even further, if I was 18 again, I would have told myself, never stop learning.
Mm-hmm.
just continue with education, because I went straight into the family business. So, and education has been a game changer for me. And I really believe that education and that continuous education and, picking apart topics that you wouldn't normally want to delve into and just trying new things in the education sphere. So if I was to go back to my 18-year-old self, it would be, you don't need to work so hard.
Yeah.
You don't need to prove yourself to anyone, especially yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And education.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe that education can change the state of the world. And, if we continuously stretch our minds and we continuously stretch our learnings and our topics of interest, we become more interesting people to have a conversation with, as opposed to a one-dimensional based on your role and life that you have.
Yeah, interesting you say that, because I mean, you've got a 6 and an 8-year-old, right?
Yeah.
And Josh is nearly 2, and they just learn constantly every day. I have a 365 Kiki K journal, and every night I write like something new that he's learned, something new that he's developed skills for or can do. And I just think, gosh, when is it that we just stop that? And go, I'm a lawyer, I'm an accountant, I'm a blah blah, and that's me. Like, I'm done university, or I'm done becoming a plumber or a builder or whatever it is, and I don't need to learn anymore. This is me. So I completely agree with you that the brain needs to be stimulated and can keep expanding, and you can become a bigger, better version of yourself continuously. Because I haven't got to the book where they're 18 yet about bringing children up, but I'm sure that it doesn't say, they stop learning, right? So it's interesting that as adults, we just accept that, we've learned our trade and that's it.
And it was probably all the women that I interviewed for our podcast over lockdown, like Dame Lowell Goddard or Melissa Clark Reynolds. There was a few people, Abby Reynolds as well, that were all stretching their minds. They were all engaged in Harvard business degrees, and, short courses, doing different things, reading crazy books. And it was them that were reminding me that it's no matter what stage of your life, you just need to keep reading, keep learning, keep expanding the mind, and keep being curious. Curiosity is such a wonderful word, far more wonderful than mysterious. Mysterious is kind of murky, but curious is, that person who's that adventurer, who's looking within their mind to find better ways and better approaches and new ways, I guess.
Brilliant. Well, I guess that kind of dovetails quite well into this last question that I always ask people is, what legacy are you wanting to create and leave in the online space?
Oh, in the online space, I guess everything ends up staying in the cloud forever,
Exactly. So
guess,
you're not going anywhere. Like, as in, you're not going to be able to just disappear.
I guess if I wanted my children to look back on my work and it was all out there in the digital sphere, I would love for them to see that I've created a positive impact with supporting women to continuously educate themselves, empower themselves, and invest and back themselves as well. But I guess my other most important role is more so offline. The work that I do with education for the RSE community from Vanuatu, that are here working temporarily in New Zealand, particularly in Marlborough and Hawke's Bay and in, the agricultural sphere, is really that kind of hands-on education. They don't have the opportunity to learn, in a technical environment or through technology or through computers because they're computer illiterate. So it's really about that tangible one-on-one. It's that connection. It's that human connection. It's those relationships that we're talking about. And it's that teaching in a physical environment to support them to be business women, to support them to be entrepreneurs so that they can take those things back to, the Solomon Islands or Vanuatu and actually enable them to create a business. Yeah. So they're probably more my focuses around legacy. I always, probably for the last 7 years, I've always wanted to work for the United Nations. And so it was really, there's always something deep in my heart where it's also about supporting marginalized people or underprivileged people or vulnerable people that is something that I have a true passion for. So that's probably my greatest legacy.
Wow, exciting. And your children will be so proud of you when they're old enough to not just be proud because you made pizza for dinner on Friday night. Because that's kind of where we're at right now, isn't it? To be honest. Yeah. So how can people get in touch with you? I mean, you mentioned your live events. Obviously, I was on my way to one, and then it got postponed. Hopefully, you'll bring them back again.
Yeah. So entrepreneurwomenwithpurpose.com. I do spend a lot of time on LinkedIn connecting digitally first to other human beings who are doing interesting things. But otherwise, email me, Catherine at entrepreneurwomenwithpurpose.com, or all the other social handles, Instagram, social, Facebook, LinkedIn, anywhere.
Amazing. And we'll put all the links to those in the show notes. So make sure that you head on over and grab all those links and get in touch and consume. And do you have anything that the listeners could download, or a little gift or anything like that, so that they can take this a little bit further with you?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a 3-month online membership for our digital channel, which includes 50 podcasts of really interesting women, a digital magazine, access to all of our digital events, and connecting to our community.
Wow, amazing. All right, well, we'll pop the link to that in the show notes as well, so you guys can jump on that. And as Catherine sort of popped into the conversation here, some of those people are pretty high profile. That would be amazing to go back and listen to. And one of the things I think about that you were saying about continuous education, it doesn't have to always be like the university degree level type education. You can start really small by listening to podcasts like the one you're listening to now, or like within this membership area, and really like commit yourself to getting your butt out the door with your headphones in and going for a walk for that half an hour interview and listening to that. And that's kind of like a real easy life hack there. You've got your exercise and you've got some education happening at the same time. So even if you're a busy mama or you've already got a full-time job, listening to education is super easy and super affordable and super accessible. Like, it's incredible. And so many people have said to me, I don't have time to read. But I couldn't read a book, via audio. Just give it a chance, because actually you absorb a whole lot more. And I'm sure there's a lot of brain stats around that, but you actually consume it and you will retain it. So that sounds like a fantastic thing for everyone listening to jump into.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Okay. And so we always end the episode with the last little soundbite. What's your favorite one-liner that you give yourself to get momentum in your business daily?
Oh, I don't know if it's a daily, but always when I'm lying in bed in the morning, and it's an old mantra that came from the divine Robin Sharma. If you've ever read any of those books, The Saint, the Surfer, and the CEO, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And it's these daily rituals of, telling yourself of your worth and your self-worth and your belief. And it's just these, I can't even think of how it goes now. I've said it so many times that I can't even think of how it goes, but it's just these constant repetition of the words relating to self-belief, that every day that you are going to be a better version of yourself, and that you will create wealth, and you will create success, and you will create knowledge, and it's just that constant reminder to myself when I'm lying in bed at 6:10 and I can't be bothered to get out of bed.
Well, obviously you haven't read Robin Sharma's The 5 a.m. Club one, because then you'd be up at 5 a.m.
I 5 a.m. for about 7 years, and when I moved to New Zealand, I was like, it's just too cold to get out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning. But I am a 5 a.m. Ritual lover. I will get back to it one day.
Do you know what? I did a post, total side note here, but I did a post about the non-5 a.m. Routine. So basically you can do it at any time you want, as long as you get it all done before you have distraction. And so many people, oh my goodness, thousands of people liked and downloaded it and saved it, because I think that just the actual number of 5 a.m. is too hard. At least at 10 past 6, you're still going through those things in your head and you are still starting the day like that. Then it doesn't matter if it's 5, 6 or 7, as long as you get those bits done before you start your day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for being on the show and on this episode. And as Catherine said, it's all about relationships. So if you do want to get in touch with her, make sure that you connect with her like you would if you were face to face, and take that learning into your business. And thank you for all of your insights and wonderfulness.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Alrighty. And if you want to listen into the next episode, you know where to find it. Hit next. Thanks. If you love the woo with the do and you want to dive deeper into how you too can get and keep momentum in your business, then join thousands of other online entrepreneurs like yourself and head on over to Amazon and grab a copy of my book, Get Momentum, your ultimate guide to create 100K in 100 days without fear, overwhelm, and burnout. And while it's being delivered to you, you'll have time to leave a 5-star review of the podcast before you head on over to the next episode.